Now, let's begin on this, well, it's been sad news for a week now or so because this thing happened on Monday, the 1st of November, and we've had a very somber week as a result of it when that 21-story building on Gerrard Road collapsed. Well, as of last night, we hear that 38 bodies have been recovered, while 9 people were rescued alive. So the Lagos State government has inaugurated a panel to look into the causes of that collapse. But we, on our part, we're going to also put in our 2 bits with our panelists. We have 2 engineers with us, a structural engineer, Jibola Tijani, as well as a design technologist, Mordecai Uzosike. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for the invite.
Now, that sad incident, Mr. Tijani, I wouldn't expect to put down $1 million to buy an apartment and watch it just crumble. What things do you think may have contributed to that building just crumbling down like that?
Thank you, and let me start by first sending out my condolences to the families and friends of those who lost their precious lives in that unfortunate incident. It is avoidable. It shouldn't have happened. And I hope and I believe the panel of inquiry set up by the governor will unravel what actually went wrong. Something really went wrong. And when you look at building, it's like a human body that consists of several parts. When one of the parts is faulty, is defective, the others will suffer as well. You can divide that into 2 when it comes to building. The human factor and nature. But in this environment, you always rule out nature. We are so lucky we don't have anything like seismic or earthquake over here. Then we don't have that gust that could probably affect the building that much. So it's always about human error. Building itself is a system, and it starts from conception. You have the client who call an architect to come and translate the idea or the thought that, oh, I want something. The architect comes in, he brings in the structural engineers to look at the design. Is this constructible? So the structural engineer does his own work and return back to the architect, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, and then you are good to go. Then you go to the government to alert them that we're planning to do something, we need your permission, and you bring in other stakeholders. So in doing that, if people comply with the regulations that you have to submit this document, that document, and the construction itself is well supervised, I don't think a building that is not in existence, as in that's been completed, a building that is still under construction should suffer that fate. I think something really went wrong.
Mr. Ososiki, there's a question that I've been asking, and I do not have a satisfactory answer yet. If you look at the pictures of the collapse, the building that collapsed, the unfortunate description that always comes to my mind is that of a pack of sliced bread. Now, that tells me one thing. The slabs, the decks, seem to be very well made. It's only the pillars, the columns, and all of that. The pave, I don't know what you call it, the decks.
No, the slabs.
The slabs, thank you. They were all well made, so well made that all through, every single one of them just seemed to collapse just like that. I don't even know how to put it to a question right now because, I mean, it's still befuddling for me. What was missing in the, was it okay? I mean, he has spoken to the likelihood of things that went wrong. Was it a design error, a structure error, material error? Because these three are human errors.
Mr. Ayo, up to now, I've not gotten over the shock of that very incident. Because as a design technologist, that's the field I play in. I wonder what it will look like going out for my day's job, only for my family to have me as a headline news. I have kids still growing up. I can't even imagine. I commend my dear brother, fellow panelist, my engineer, who took time out to commiserate with the families of the bereaved. I'm also adding the survivors, whose traumatic experience will leave them with a lifetime of experience. Some of them may not get back from the post-traumatic stress of this very incident. In actuality, we've gone through this for so many times. I want to massage the ego of some people who felt Nigeria is doing well by saying that Nigeria is not in isolation with regards to this. Admittedly. But the question is, why is the whole world looking at us as, is their family problem? Because there's a track record. There's a track record of compromises. And people have spoken in times past. We had passionate Nigerians, very patriotic Nigerians, who have actually voiced out their concerns as regards the future of this country. The likes of Fela Nicola Kuti, the erudite, legal luminary, Gani Fayemi, Idris Abdulkarim, African China, Babatunde Raji Fashola, a host of them whom time will fail me to mention. They have actually expressed concern as the way this country is moving. But permit me to diverge a bit, because I am actually trained on the maxim, creativity, technology in a cultural context. And HSBC will say, never underestimate cultural knowledge. So I don't want to actually go into information that is in public domain. You can see on Google, there are fantastic articles that have been written on building collapse, even with Nigeria as a case study. But I want to focus on the cultural, indigenous problems that are contemporary to us currently.
And contributes to building collapse.
Absolutely. One, on my list, I'm articulating them in 3 different categories. The first has to do with the economy. The second has to do with government bottleneck. And the third is where all of us are culpable of: the demonic, manipulative tendency that is gaining ascendancy in this country. We all connived at it, and we are paying the ultimate price for it. Insecurity and the likes, they're all connected to it. It's systemic and foundational as well. Now, going back to that economy, you might ask, okay, what does economy have to do with building collapse? I will explain to you. In 2015 to 2016, I almost lost my last child. I was taking her to hospital as an outpatient. She was being taken care of, and she wasn't getting better. That dent of godly wisdom just came into my brain. And I told the doctor, can you please verify the dosage of these drugs that are being administered? And when he took it, fortunately, it's a hospital that has a bit of standard. When he took the drugs to the lab, I will shock you with this information. A drug that is meant to be 250 milligrams was about 125 or less. When I came out from that experience, what the doctor, immediately he came out from the lab, he said, Mr. Mordecai, we are finished in this country. The doctor I'm saying is still alive till today. He now told me I'm going to stop every dosage of these pharmaceutical products, locally sourced. I'm going to use from the bank of the hospital the imported drugs. They are quite expensive, but please, give me that guarantee that you will actually indemnify the organization for whatever administration that was made. And I obliged. With every passing administration, this child got better. When I now left the hospital, I'm talking to you now, I have 2 ladies, close family friends, that lost their children as a result of that very experience. One of them, she hasn't gotten past the trauma of losing the last but one child. About then was 11 years. And that child was in the heart of the mother.
Can you relate this to the, story that you told?
Now, in the building industry, Mr. Ayo, you can send out investigative journalists, go to our building markets. You will see a rod that is categorized to be 12 mm rod. Put your micrometer screw gauge to it. You'll be having 10.8 or 11.2 millimeters.
How significant is that?
Yeah, if a structural engineer is working, my fellow panelists will even expatiate more on that. If a structural engineer is working on a calculation of 12 millimeter size of rod embedded in a concrete, and now you are giving him, you might look at that as minute, but spread it across the quantity of iron rods that will be used for the entire building. Again, I talked about the pharmaceutical industry, the cement as well. Who is checking the quality of the cement that we are using? Because these are businessmen. They want to succeed. So when you go to the market today, your raw materials are all imported. You now have a material today at the exchange rate for 580. In 3 days' time, is 590. In 5 days' time, is 612. How does it break even?
Okay. Well, there's a lot that you're packed there. Well, we have the third, panelist that I think we should bring on just before now. But let's go ahead. He's waiting.
We've since been joined by Engineer Ben Onyerionwu, who's also a structural engineer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Before I come to you, let me just ask Mordecai something which has just skipped out of my head.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sure it will come back.
It will come back.
Yes. Mr. Ben, what are your thoughts? What could be the reasons, I'm sure there are a number of them, for the incident that we witnessed in Lagos on Monday?
All right, thank you. Just like the last speaker said, my heart goes out to those families who have lost loved ones in that incident. It's quite unfortunate, and it's preventable, like the other speaker said. Now, as a structural engineer, one can easily see what has gone wrong with the building, but investigation will bring out the actual truth. This building was still under construction when it gave way. So the situation is a peculiar case. People tend to allude that there are collapses all over the world and things like that, but there are slight differences. A building is usually designed to carry its own weight, number one, and then to carry the weight of those who are going to use it. So when the building is fully under construction and is put into use for a number of period of years and it comes down, it's a different thing from a building that collapses under construction. But it means that that building cannot even carry its own weight. So there's a peculiar situation, and something is fundamentally wrong.
Hearing this, engineer, just a second. It's not the first time we're hearing of buildings coming down while still under construction. So you said earlier that it's easy for us to see what is wrong, but maybe I'm blind. I don't know.
You're a layman.
I'm a layman, so I don't really know. As you said, maybe investigations will bring further facts out. So the fact that it is under construction while it was still under construction when it happened is definitely troubling. So what are the things that we should have paid attention to, in your opinion?
Okay, thank you very much. A building that comes down under construction, right? There are majorly two things that could be wrong with that building. Just like I said, the
I'm sure we'll have him back shortly. So you wanted to ask...
Okay. Mordecai, you spoke about the sizes of rods.
Good.
Now, who in this value chain that you spoke about, all those who come together to take part in the construction of such a building, who are those who go out to make the purchases for the construction? My question really is, so who are those who are going to buy the iron rods? Do they have a way of checking that the rods they're purchasing meets the spec for the building they're working on? Who are those who go out to buy the cement? Who are those who go out to buy the sand? You know, and how do they check the quality of those things that they're buying?
That's about the third point in the categories I actually made mention of, that I wanted the cultural, indigenous, contemporary challenges that we have with regards to this. That's talking about the demonic, manipulative tendency that has gained ascendancy in this country. How does this actually affect the question you just asked? I go to the market. As extensive as a building market is, all what we have within the vicinity. And everybody seems to be selling the same thing. I need to construct this house, get done with it, because I don't want inflation to subject that construction to an uncompleted or abandoned project. I'm in want of time. So the tendency is you go to A, B, up to H, and it's about the same thing. You start making compromises. Because except you want to now place orders, because if we have these factories working right here, like if the Ajaokuta steel industry that has been there even before I was giving birth to, has been up and doing, using our raw materials to produce these items for us, it's easier for you to specifically ask for your products, even if it's going to come at a bit of cost. But right now, everything we use is imported.
But so, Mordecai,
yeah.
You go to the market, you go from A to H, and you find that they're selling the same thing. Okay. But you are working as part of a team. Is the rest of the team made aware of your challenge, that you are going to compromise on the size of the iron rods you're going to use?
Now, it's still circumnavigating around the same point, because definitely there's an organogram, so you give feedbacks. And your boss, who happened to be the developer, it's furious because he is looking at his profit. People have already made payments. He needs to complete the house for them to take possession.
I know there are a number of developers in this country who import everything. And he's talking about the economic consideration. And there are those who buy properties off plan.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are those who buy properties while still in construction. First of all, there's so many things around this issue. Talking about the materials bit of it, who should be standardizing quality? Especially because we are importing this very critical infrastructure.
Thank you very much for that question. We have a Standard Organization of Nigeria.
Sure. And that's where they come in.
Responsibility.
I understand the meaning of the word standard. And I know that Standards Organization of Nigeria is supposed to be doing that. Okay. So, but the question that I'm asking is, if the Standards Organization is not up and doing, so to speak, what does that suggest?
On another platform yesterday, social media, I sent a message and I was appealing to the professional organizations, the body that I call the end users of this material, that we need to be on our feet. We must ensure we put patriotism at the front. We must ensure we get things right so that most of us, not all of us, most of us will be all right. We can't allow all these things to linger on because it's affecting all of us. Now, when we notice all this, a structural engineer designed and said, okay, you should use 16 mm for this element or 20 mm. The company or the developer within that team you must have your quality assurance and quality control engineers. Even when you ask someone to go and supply any product to your site, there are standard tests that must be carried out before you even use this material, and the result must be out. You go and test the tensile strength of the steel. The essence of this steel is because concrete, it's a material that is good in compression, but poor in tension. So the essence of structural engineering is to provide reinforcement to support the weakness part of concrete. Absolutely. So when you notice something is wrong, you need to raise an alarm within the team that we need to do something. Don't compromise. So during the test, you know the area of a 16 mm. If somebody is supplying something less, of course, there's going to be a catastrophic failure. Sure. Because 16 mm, 4 of it, you know the area. When you are bringing it 12 or 14, it will always give way. Sure. It's just a matter of time. Sure. So the professional bodies, Nigerian Society of Engineers, the architects, everybody, the stakeholders in the construction industry should be on their feet. Sure. They should be entering where they are selling this material, picketing people. Sure. You already have your 16 mm size. You have your caliper that you can use to measure it. Go there. Go and pick samples and let us have maybe the security agency that will back them up. We all need to be the foot soldiers for this industry.
You see, what you just mentioned now, let me take this to Engineer Enyirion. I don't know if you agree with what Engineer Tijani just said. You know, okay, I think we don't have him back yet, but maybe I should ask you, Engineer Uzosike. When you talk about individuals who play in this industry and who have a measure of influence, so before we came on, Lara was talking about it. Do you know who I am, people? You know, I mean, they have a measure of influence in society, and they are the ones who are the bankrollers, so to speak, of these projects. And you raise such quality assurance or lack of it issues, and you risk losing your job. You risk losing that contract simply because you are raising the issue. Well, patriotism is good, you know, but patriotism, some people would say patriotism doesn't pay school fees, and patriotism doesn't pay house rent, doesn't put food on the table and all those things. So it's now within the devil and the deep blue sea. How do we circumvent that?
Well,
I know I'm asking you a very difficult question.
No, it's not that difficult, because I have come to realize that wealth made gradually is sustainable, but the one that is quickly gotten leads to disaster. It's a wise saying. So as a result of that, I have actually held myself or restrained myself from getting involved in things that I know will haunt me in future, because whatever we sow, we shall reap. It's a fundamental law of nature. Whatever one sows, we will reap. We can't fool the Almighty. Even if we like, we sleep in temples. I have been in situations where I almost compromised. And I'm telling you, there are Nigerians that are very honest, very determined, and the Almighty, I will be grateful to him for using such individuals to wipe me up to do the right thing. I remember as a child, less than 6-year-old, the cane I received from a war against indiscipline brigade still rings bell in my brain up till today. If I take sachet water, I will put the livet in my pocket until I see a wasting. But behold, people who were older than me, old enough to know the impact of that very discipline. Most of them, in their SUVs, they will just finish eating, they wind down, fling it up to the distance. What impression are you leaving to successive generation? So there's a lot of misnomer. There's a big lacuna. But the tendency there is that we must be intentional and deliberate to make the best of a worse situation. Countries that we look at today as being successful are those who are determined to make the best of a worse situation.
Yeah. Engineer, you know, when I want TED Talk, I'll invite you. But for now, speak to the construction industry.
Okay. Sticking to the construction industry, you see, Mr. Ayo, I must tell you this. It's a very complex problem, admittedly. Why do I say this? My second point has to do with the government bottleneck. I am actually contravening the stipulations by virtue of the law. And because I'm a big wig, beyond the governor of the state, by the time the governor, because he has people whom he has delegated to oversee certain issues, these people are doing their work. They come to my site. They want to actually clamp down construction. They want to do verifications. And they are seeing that I'm not complying to the dictates of the laws. By the time they start effecting a clampdown, what actually happens? The phone call is used for negative purposes. I'm not even going to call the governor. I'm going to call his godfather, his mother, his religious leader, the uncle. And by the time this one gets to call, hello, oh mommy, ejo, àbúrò yín, efile, má bínú, efile.
Right now I'm protesting because you're speaking my language.
No, I'm sorry, my brother. I'm sorry, because it's the region I find myself in. You understand? So I have to actually say something in the language that the people understand.
Well, they are watching this program in Maiduguri right now.
Fine. So as a result, this person is appealing sentimentally on my behalf for doing the wrong thing. And it's coming from somebody whose offers the governor, the building regulatory director general, this thing cannot resist.
Engineer Ben Enyiriowo is back with us in this conversation. I think you have a question for him.
Yes, so Enyiriowo, judging from all the things we have read and seen regarding this building collapse, one thing that struck me was the project board, one, and then two, the fact that in June this year, I think it was, the work on that site had been stopped by the Lagos state government. And shortly after, work resumed again. First of all, is it standard practice that project boards carry just telephone numbers?
I had a bit of network issues, but I'm back now. It's not actually standard practice. A project board should contain the name and addresses of the consultants and contractors who are working on the project. Even that of the subcontractors should be there too. Their phone numbers should be clearly written with their name and addresses. With regards to the closure of the site by the Lagos state government, there could have been several reasons why they closed the site. They've not told us why they closed the site. A site could be closed because they flouted administrative regulations. A site could be closed, maybe there are some quality control issues. Did they close the site because there are some flouting of some administrative regulations, or did they close it because we have some quality issues? That needs to be determined.
And then staying with you, the jury is still out regarding how many floors were actually approved for that project. We hear 15 first, and then we hear the one that went down is actually 21. So did the state government approve for them to put a 21-story building on that site?
Well, that is still speculatory, because as of now, we don't know what the truth is. But if a lower number of floors were approved, and the developer went ahead and put more floors than was approved, that's a major shift. That's a major shift. Okay? Well, be that as you may, let's assume that actually 15 was approved, and the developer went as far as 21 floors. And we also know that the structural engineer wrote a letter that he has withdrawn from sites. That's also very important. I think from the letters we see going around on the internet, the structural engineer said he is withdrawing his services from the 5th floor or so. I am not too sure, on the 5th floor. So the investigation needs to understand and determine whether the structure was safe to the 5th floor and became unsafe after the 5th floor. Well, we need to determine the probability of everybody who's involved in the project, because whether we like it or not, the career and reputation of the structural engineer is at stake, and that needs to be cleared.
15 floors, 21 floors. If approval is given for 15 and a developer goes ahead to put 21 on the site, what should have happened?
The design should be revised. They would have revised the design and applied for a secondary approval. You can't get approval for 15 floors and then you go to 21 floors. That's a major flouting of building regulations, both technical and administrative. There's no excuse for that.
The interesting thing when you talk about these things, I'm just wondering, because these things really do happen in the city. Well, so far, I think we've heard the Lagos State government also come to flag a number of buildings, a significant number of buildings. I don't have the numbers yet, in the region of 100 or a little less than that, you know, because we have several buildings in the city where, I mean, it's just a bungalow. Before you know what is happening, they put a slab on it, and then another slab on it, and then I'm wondering who is going to scan the building to check the skeleton underground if it can carry, you know, the building that is being put up. But, you know, let's start this line of the conversation with you. 43 building collapses were recorded in 2019. That's just 2 years ago. And, of course, after every building collapse, we always have this what do we call it now, panel of inquiry to check what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. Yet another one has happened. There are even rumors, I'm not very sure, that there was another, you know, building collapse in Lagos after, you know, the one of Monday. The one of Monday.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, how hopeful are you that, I mean, this new panel, this panel investigating this collapse is going to make any significant dent in the issue?
I think I'll want to strongly appeal to the 5-man panel of inquiry to do a thorough work, at least to put this to an end. Over the years, there has not been consequences for all this. And we need to communicate this to the general public out there. When things like this happen, people want to read it in the dailies. They want it to be documented. They want to know that certain things happened and people were penalized. It's in the regulations that when something like this happens, this is the penalty. And part of it, like, government might need to review some of this. I was going through some of the regulations yesterday night, and when you have 250,000, 500,000 fine as against 3 years imprisonment or 1 year imprisonment, we need, the essence of law is to, you know, caution people that don't do this. When you make something as more as like 25 years imprisonment, that will sink into people's hearts. I don't want to spend a quarter of my life behind bars. I so much believe these are people with high integrity, and the building itself is something that everybody should be talking about if everything, you know, really going well.
Well, you know, another leg to that, Dr. Tijani, is that several people, even here in this conversation, we have spoken about the collapsed building. As I said, you know, between Alero and I before we come on air, it's 3 buildings. Only one of them came down. That must say something. You know, is it because the team changed that was working on it? Is it because the structures changed, materials changed, economic factors that Engineer Uzosike raised earlier? What are the things that you think? Because there are 3. If one of them was structurally deficient, shouldn't it affect the others?
Now, let's look at it from the situation. Building comes from the ground.
Sure.
And according to whom we call the father of soil mechanics, Carl von Terzaghi, said, soils, they are product of nature, no man-made. And the product of nature, they are complex.
Absolutely.
1 meter on this side, another meter on this side, the soil strata might be different. So you are building your house here, you are using this type of foundation. Your neighbor might be building another house, you might be using different type, because these soil are made from nature. You don't understand what is underneath unless you go deeper. That is where we have the geotechnical engineers, that they will be the first person to ascertain the nature of that soil. What type of building can you erect here? What type of foundations? And in a scenario where you have a structural engineer that's done his own design with the applied load and the foundation recommended by the geotechnical engineer based on the soil strata, if you have any variation during construction, you are not changing the foundation. It's like you are walking in your two legs. Your weight on that leg should be 25. Now you're having 50. Of course, before you know it, the leg will be stressed. That is the foundation. So when the foundation cannot uphold the load, it gives way. Again, building, like I said earlier, is like a body part. You have the slab that is transmitting load down to the beam, to the column, down to the foundation and the underlying soil strata. If any part is faulty, and that is part of our design issue, that I will want to recommend that we start looking at having a robust structure so that when one part collapses, the other will now find a way to redistribute, they'll find another load part, so that even while one has failed, the building is still safe, so that we can prevent disproportionate
I understand
collapse.
we need to close now, but just last words, perhaps a kind of counsel to the panel. So let me begin with you very quickly, Engineer, Dr. Tijani. What would be your recommendations? What are the things that you would suggest? I assume that they're professionals, just as you said. What are the things that you would suggest that the panel should be looking for in 10 seconds?
So that this does not happen again.
The human error, material. The recommendation should involve incentivizing the staff of the building control. I don't think they have enough capacity. The state government should engage consultants for the building control and other agencies. They can't do it alone, and we need to collaborate with the professional bodies.
Okay. Engineers of
Just like Volkswagen will say, when they built Santana, they said there's nothing more to add. He has just said it all. The government should empower those they employ. Our politicians should look beyond the 4 years, 8 years of the administration and know they are impacting on generations. So that whatever they are doing within the confines of their office is to ensure sustainability and to ensure the preservation of life and property.
Engineer Onyero, what will be your final words?
My final words will be that the panel doing the investigation should concentrate on the quality of the materials that were used for the construction. Because if you look at the way the excavator is easily removing the concrete rubbles, it shows that the material used in the first place is nothing to write home about.
Mr. Ben Onyero, who's a structural engineer, joined us via Zoom. We had engineers Mordecai Uzosike, a design technologist, and Ajibola Tijani, structural engineer, who were with us in our studio in Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us to look at this critical matter.